All right, it's time to work on the types of charts directly in Looker Studio. Forget about the report we created earlier, where we were exploring the interface. Let's go back into Looker Studio and create a new report. Create report. This will also help us review how to connect the data source. We will select the Google Analytics data source. We select the demo account and the merch shop. We add it to the report, and that's it. We have now connected our data source to start working. There's a good practice whenever you connect a new data source. Change the name. This is so you can identify your data source, as when you work on very large reports, you will realize that you will use information from multiple sources and will need to know which is which. Let's suppose you are working on a regional account that has separate accounts for Ecuador, Colombia, and Peru. You will need to know how to identify that data source. So I'm going to teach you how to change the name of the data source. We go to Resource, Manage Added Data Sources, and here we will have our data source associated. For now, it's the only one we have. This is useful when we use multiple data sources. We go to the Edit section and change the name. I will name it Google Demo Account Looker Studio. Correct. That is the name I want to use to identify this data source. You can give it any name you want, but the idea is for you to understand how to make that name change. I also want you to notice something important here, how it shows us the data. Here we will have all the data, in this case, dimensions and metrics of what we will find within this data source. How to identify a dimension from a metric? Generally, dimensions, as we saw, are categorical variables that can be text, dates, countries, among others. On the other hand, metrics have numerical values. Here we can have added items, viewed items, conversions, ad impressions, click-through rates, among other metrics. Once we've changed the name, we click on Done, close it, and we're all set. By default, a table is always dragged in. However, we will delete it because we will work with other types of charts. We will also change the name of our report. I will name it Types of Charts. You can name it whatever you want. Now, let's start working. The first chart we will look at is the scorecards. Scorecards allow us to display total or aggregated results of our data. But before that, I want us to look at something. While it's true that later we will work on types of controls, I want us to check one in advance, which is the date range control. This control allows us to select a predetermined period to show the amount of that metric within the range we have defined. Here we can set a custom period we want to see. For example, I want to see the first 15 days of November, so I will select from November 1st to November 15th, click on Apply, and the data will update with the results obtained during those dates. Now, moving on to the topic of charts, the first one we will see is the scorecard. We will go to Add a Chart and select the first of the scorecards. When we select it, we can drag it anywhere in the report. At the beginning of the course, I mentioned that Looker Studio is a tool with a lot of drag and drop, which is why its learning curve is lower. Once I select the desired chart, it brings up a default metric. In this case, it brought the metric of views. But before anything else, I will change the period in which I want my data to be displayed. I will select last month, and it will show me the date from October 1st to October 31st. When I click on Apply, the data will be modified with this control. Now we begin to understand the importance of controls. For this class, we will work with the previous month. Now I want to add another metric. I will also select my scorecard, and I want this new scorecard to bring me the information for new users. How do I change the default metric it brings? There are two ways to do it. I can go directly to the chart settings in the metrics section, search for the metric I want to change, and select it. In this case, we will look for new users. By doing this, we see that it has already changed to the newly selected metric. The other way to do it is to look for it directly in the section called Data. To do this, we go to the search bar and type New Users. To add it, I simply drag it directly to the metrics section within the chart settings. However, there won't be any change here because this metric is already selected. So I'm going to select another metric, which in this case will be the number of sessions on my site. To do this, I'll type Sessions in the search bar. Once located, I'll drag it to my chart configuration, and this way we can see how the metric of new users has been replaced by sessions. One of the most interesting and important features of scorecards, and indeed of almost all charts in Looker Studio, is the ability to make comparisons with previous time periods. In this case, I'm going to select the scorecard. I'll go to the configuration section, and in the other comparison options, I'll make sure that period is selected. Once this is done, I'll scroll down to the comparison date range section, where we can choose a period with which we want to make the comparison, whether it's custom or one of the default options available. I'm going to select previous period. By selecting this option, it will compare the results obtained during the selected period, which in this case is last month, with the immediately preceding period. In other words, it's comparing the results obtained in October with those from September. The comparison is displayed in percentage format. But what does this percentage indicate? This percentage shows that we've decreased by 14% in views in October compared to September. Let's do the same process with sessions. First, I'll select the session scorecard, go to the configuration, and tell it to compare with the previous period. That way, we'll also have the comparison included in this scorecard. When we open the chart menu, did you notice that there are two scorecards? What's the difference between them? I'm going to select the second one, called Scorecard with compact numbers, and drag it into our report. I'll configure this scorecard with the metric of sessions to see the differences between the two charts. The only difference is that this one shows abbreviated numbers, using conventional numeric abbreviations for thousands or millions. When should I use each scorecard? Generally, there's no strict rule for using them, but scorecards with abbreviated numbers are useful when we're dealing with very large figures, such as millions of results, or when we're using monetary data, like budgets in the millions of pesos or dollars. I'm going to take a specific metric to explore another of the configurations available in scorecards. For this, I'll go back to the Add a Chart section and select another scorecard, dragging it into my report. Now, I'll go to the Data section, and in the search bar, I'll type Bounce Rate. I'll select it and drag it to the configuration of my chart. I'm going to make a comparison by selecting the option to compare with the previous period. I press Apply and we're done. What happens when I select the bounce rate? Let's analyze what this means. A bounce rate shows the percentage of users who visit our website and then either go to another page or leave our site. We would expect the bounce rate to be lower, indicating that users are staying on the website. However, what this indicates is that the bounce rate has increased, and it's marked in green, indicating that this is a positive change. It may be positive, but generally speaking, a higher bounce rate is a negative indicator. So I want the increase in the bounce rate to indicate a negative change, showing the percentage comparison in red. Let's make this change. I select the chart, go to the Style section, and scroll down to the Comparison fields, where the colors are indicated. I'll make the change. I'll select the upward arrow, which is green, and choose one of the red colors from the palette. For the downward arrow, I'll do the same process, but select one of the colors from the green palette. Notice that we've reversed the style. Now it indicates that the bounce rate has gone up and is marked in red, indicating that this is a negative change compared to the previous period. Scorecards are among the easiest charts to use and the most useful when we want to present summaries of our data over a specified period. I'll see you in the next class, where we'll continue exploring other types of charts.